for this country. But I also believe we as Republicans have to look at those who are not doing well in our society by just cutting taxes and balancing budgets. And that's why I put forth a plan that Iowans responded to. It's a plan that says, yes, let's flatten the tax code, get rid of it, replace it with 5 deductions. Let's create 2 rates, 10 and 28. Why 28? If it's good enough for Ronald Reagan, it's good enough for me. Then I take the corporate tax, cut that in half because it's the highest in the world and we need to be competitive. But when I traveled around Iowa to the small towns, I found a lot of those small towns were just like the small towns that I traveled around in Pennsylvania. They were towns that were centered around manufacturing and processing, those good jobs that built those towns. And those jobs slowly, whether it's in Hamburg, whether it's in Newton, or any place in between, we found those jobs leaving Iowa. Why? Because our workers didn't want to work? Because our workers weren't competitive? No. It's because government made workers uncompetitive by driving up the cost of doing business here. It's 20% more expensive to do manufacturing jobs in this country than it is in the top 9 trading partners that we have to compete with. And that's why we're losing our jobs. And so when Republican purists say to me, well, why are you treating manufacturing different than retail? I say because Walmart's not moving to China and taking their jobs with them. So we eliminate the corporate tax on manufacturing so we can compete. We take the regulations, every regulation that's over $100 million, and we repeal all those regulations. Repeal them all, and there's a lot of them. Under the Bush and Clinton administrations, they averaged 60 regulations over $100 million a year. This administration hit 150 last year. You don't want to know what's crushing business? This administration is crushing business. People have asked me, well, why do you think you can win? Because we've been told by so many people that there's another candidate in this race who is running a rather close race with me tonight. That is a better person to choose because he can win. Let me tell you.
Romneycare.
What wins? What did you say?
Romney.
Oh, Romneycare. Okay. I just didn't hear you. What wins? What wins in America are bold ideas, sharp contrasts, and a plan that includes everyone. And a plan that includes people from all across the economic spectrum. A plan that says we will work together to get America to work. How did I win when I won in Pennsylvania? I won because I went out and worked in the communities like I grew up in. Butler, Pennsylvania, a steel town. How was I able to win as a congressman in a 60% Democratic district and then in a 70% Democratic district which represented all of the old abandoned steel mills in Pittsburgh? All of them, along the Monongahela River, those mills were in my district. And I ran in a tough election year when George Bush Sr. was losing the election by a landslide in my district. And I got 60% of the vote because I shared the values of the working people in that district. If we have someone who can go out to Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin and Iowa and Missouri and appeal to the voters that have been left behind by a Democratic Party that wants to make them dependent instead of valuing their work, we will win this election. the same people that President Obama talked about who cling to their guns and their Bibles. Thank God they do. They share our values about faith and family. They understand that when the family breaks down, the economy struggles. They understand when families aren't there to instill values into their children and into their neighbors as Little League coaches, as good neighbors of fathers and mothers being part of a community, that the neighborhood is not safe and they are not free. These are the basic values that Americans stand for. And those are the values that we need if we're going to go up against Barack Obama and win this election and restore the founding principles of our country to America. I want to close by thanking all of you. This has been an incredible journey. 99 counties, 381 town hall meetings, 36 pizza ranches. And you'll notice I'm not buttoning my coat for a reason. Okay, I love Iowa, but the fare can be a little bit thickening. It's been a great journey. And I just have to say, I always said, you know, the three words that I heard most often when I traveled around this state. Well, that was late.
Welcome to Iowa.
Welcome to Iowa. I want to thank the Iowans who are up here on stage. You were introduced to many of them. Folks who stood up when no one else was standing up. Folks who, when I was sitting at single digits in the polls, believed in the message and the messenger, believed in the cause, and were willing to stand behind us and do what was not popular in the world today. Lead. They led. And to each and every one of you, I want to thank you for leading, for doing what was necessary to promote the cause of liberty. Thank you, including Matt Schultz. I have to particularly give a shout out to the guy who really helped us on the ground here as a volunteer late, became a little bit of a symbol of the campaign, the owner of the Chuck Truck. I love that graphic. I don't really often talk about the New York Times, but I love that graphic in the New York Times. It had how the entourages traveled around the state. And there were these long rows of buses and people and airplanes and SUVs and people and staff. And then all the way at the bottom was the Chuck Truck, me, and Matt, and one of my kids. That was the most. Chuck Lund. I started with this, I'm going to end with it. You know, I haven't written a whole bunch of books in my life. I've written just one. It's called It Takes a Family. I started my speech talking about my wife, and I'll end it talking about the other gems in my life. 6 of my kids are up here: Elizabeth, John, Daniel, Sarah Maria, Peter, and Patrick. They have not seen much of their dad over the past several months. Yet they've stood by me every step of the way, encouraged me, and loved me unconditionally. There's another little girl who's not here tonight. She is with the little button. She's our little angel. That's Isabella Maria. Isabella Maria We don't take her out in crowds. She has a disability. She has a disability that has according to the records, the statistics, has a 1% chance of survival after 1 year. She is 3.5 years old. So Bella is here with us in spirit and is deeply embedded into my heart. People ask me what motivates me. I say the dignity of every human life. God has given us this great country to allow His people to be free. Has given us that dignity because we are a creation of His. And we need to honor that creation. And whether it's the sanctity of life in the womb or the dignity of every working person in America to fulfill their potential, you will have a friend in Rick Santorum. We are off to New Hampshire. Because the message I shared with you tonight is not an Iowa message or an Iowa and South Carolina message. It is a message that will resonate across this land. It will resonate, I know, in New Hampshire, because you think I've been in Iowa a lot. I've been to New Hampshire 30 times and have been more times and done more events than anybody but John Huntsman, and he cheats, he lives there. We will be in New Hampshire. We'll leave tomorrow. We'll spend our time there, and with your help and God's grace, we'll have another fun night a week from now. God bless you.
Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum. While he was speaking tonight, we got in our latest numbers. Right now, as far as we know, with 98% of the vote in, look at this. Between him and Mitt Romney, the difference is 5 votes. As we have been noting over the course of the evening, there is no recount provision in the Iowa caucuses. And so whatever that vote difference is at the end of the night is going to determine the standings. It is quite obviously too close to call with 98% of the vote in. Rick Santorum there giving a speech that will be seen by many as his introduction on the national stage. He was a United States Senator for 2 terms. He is not a complete political unknown, but winning or coming close to winning the Iowa caucuses tonight and giving that speech will be sort of a step across the threshold for him. Steve Schmidt was the chief strategist of the McCain-Palin campaign in 2008. Steve, I want to ask you first, if watching that campaign speech there, you feel like he seems he's less of a Huckabee and more of a nominee. That was a major league speech. He just hit that ball 440 yards, out down the middle of the fairway. And I think it was dead on for what he needs to do for Republican primary voters, and I think it's going to be received really well. That was a high-pressure moment for him. You're right, it was his national introduction, and he did a fantastic job. I think he's going to be a formidable opponent for Governor Romney coming down into these early contests. Right now we are looking at the Romney campaign headquarters. Again, nobody can be giving right now what's described as either a concession or a victory speech because it is still too close to call, even at nearly 40 minutes past midnight. That's Ann Romney, Mitt Romney's wife, who has been a constant companion on the campaign trail and a good political speaker on her own on behalf of her husband's campaign. Now, as Governor Romney steps up to the microphone himself with his sons behind him and his wife beside him, let's hear from him.
What happened? Yeah, we don't know what the final vote tally is going to be, but congratulations to Rick Santorum. This has been a great victory for him and for his effort. He's worked very hard in Iowa. We also feel it's been a great victory for us here. For Ron Paul as well. Ron Paul's had a great night. This has been terrific. I think it's great that here in the heartland of America that a campaign begins. All 3 of us will be campaigning very hard to make sure that we restore the heart and soul of the entire nation. And thank you, Iowa, for the great send-off you're giving to us and to the others in this campaign. Look, this is This is a campaign night where America wins. We're going to change the White House and get America back on track. I'm proud tonight to have been introduced by my